motion to open the meeting?
So I'll second that.
Are we doing this via board docs? or-
Just for us, if, yeah,
Okay, so I'll log in.
I can raise my hand.
yes. We have one exception.
Did you not bring your pencil?
I have a pencil.
And everyone's logged into the right meeting? 'Cause I see
Yes, I
there's
am,
two.
yes, yes,
All
I
those in
am.
favor, go ahead and vote.
Aye.
Okay, I'll do it for everybody.
Oh, it didn't
That's
pop,
unanimous.
didn't pop up.
It didn't pop
Oh,
up.
okay, I got it.
There we go.
No, but
It's unanimous.
Okay. There was an
Okay,
error and
let's-
your vote may not be recorded is what my.
I got it.
alright, let's stand for the pledge.
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, so let's move on to public input. If there's anyone here for public input, please come up, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes, and please just refrain from mentioning any individuals' names.
Hi, my name is Kate Lawton. I am a parent of a former student who graduated last year. I watched the video from last week's board meeting, and I was alarmed and a little upset about what's happening at Stella Maris, and I was happy with the way you all handled it and embraced it, and I think you really held IBI to the mat. So I'm curious as to whether or not IBI sent you all a report on the last 7 days of progress in the building, and if so, I'd like to see it. Did they? That was the agreement that was made in last week's board meeting, 17 ways from Sunday. That's my first point. Also, yeah, okay. Secondly, a member of the board made a public statement about their personal feelings about vaccinations, which I understand. That said, I'm not sure how appropriate it is to use your board seat as a way to make a public statement like that. I think I would have preferred if you would have gotten up and said it from this spot and not as the board president. You also made mention of something that was uncomfortable. You said that you didn't know whether or not really public input 1 or public input 2 should be responded to at all. And we fought really hard for public input years ago. Chris, you were here for that. Really hard. And when I get people's faces looking back at me and smiling at me or acknowledging me, it means a lot. It means I matter. And I needed to let the board know that I felt like that was an inappropriate use of power, maybe? Thank you.
Good evening, Jeff Peters, the 56 Main Street, Sag Harbor. Here as a taxpayer, former student Pearson, I'm kind of involved in a project that's going on behind the school, and I'm here to get some answers. The gentlemen were here all last week, and all different heads of departments, so I'm working here, building that back there all week, and then all of a sudden Friday, they had a stop work order and asked to leave the premises. It's pretty embarrassing. If that's the way the communication is, I just hope it gets better for Stella Maris, because the communication is really, really bad. And that's my opinion, and it's the word's out there. And as a taxpayer, I'm hoping that we have in our power to get somebody to come, a private auditor, and audit what's going on at Stella Maris. Because we're not getting the answers, we're being lied to, it seems like, and it's kind of sad. But my question tonight is, why all of a sudden, after they were there all weekend, all their business manager, the athletic director, the facilities manager, saw them working, doing all this work, they're almost done, and then they get handed a stop work order permit. It just doesn't make sense. So hopefully we can get some answers. He really, really worked hard for this. He raised every bit of that money, as you know, himself. And it really gives him a bad taste in his mouth, and a lot of other people. All of a sudden, you let them do it, and then boom, you stop. It's for the kids of Sag Harbor. We have to remember that. Thank you.
Hi, Sandy Crowell. I'm also here about the Dog Patch Bandits. Those are a group of kids that I actually know pretty personally because they graduated with my middle son. And I have to tell you that there's some kids in this group that I would have said to my son, I don't know if you really should be like with those guys. But these guys came together at a beach for many summers as lifeguards. And they worked really hard on what they're doing. And one of the young men in particularly is making it his mission to start his career in 501c3s. So when these guys came up with this idea and they brought it to the board or to the superintendent many months ago, I was like, this is a no-brainer. This is absolutely a no-brainer. So when I rewatched the July meeting where he spoke from his frustrations, I heard the motion, I heard the $12,500, and I saw that it was approved. I was blessed enough to be able to go to their benefit, which I believe Mr. DeSessa's wife was upset because she didn't know about it. And it was filled with probably 300 people who believe in the same cause. That if we keep kids engaged in as much physical activity as we can, we have a better chance of keeping them off of drugs and onto a path that's not in the best of their interest. So when I came to last week's board meeting, it was Monday, and I drove behind the school and I saw the truck down there and I saw it cut out, and that was Monday. I went to the board meeting, nobody talked about it, so I just assumed, great, going through with it, it's awesome, this is good, we're going on. And then unfortunately we had to get the news that there was a stop work order that was put in place. And this for me is extremely challenging, that as my son put it, this school is not behind it 110% getting it up quicker, but doing things to slow it down. And that came from Nick, my own son, who was very involved in that fundraiser that night. So I'm not sitting here to just speak for 3 minutes. I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna hope that somebody on this board addresses this issue now on what is being done to make this project up and running. So if you're gonna give me things like, you know, the volunteers or this, let me give you volunteers, theater wall, stage sets for theater. Anybody been to Chicago? That was 20 foot in the air. We had kids climbing off poles that were made from volunteers. Homecoming, I'm putting kids on floats being driven by people. I mean, volunteers is what makes Sag Harbor, why most of you moved here. So for me, this is extremely important, and I gave those boys my word that I would do whatever I needed to do to make that happen. So tonight, I would like somebody to answer that when I leave this pulpit. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to public input?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to respond to, I think, Kate Lawton, you made a comment about public input. I'm obviously just speaking for myself as someone who also found it difficult before I was on the board to come to board meetings and be told I couldn't speak until the end and have to sit here for a long time. I was someone who, and I think all of us, changed that so that you could talk about anything and so that it could be right at the start of the meetings. People don't have to sit here. But I think you might have misinterpreted some of Jordana's comments, and I'm not trying to speak for her either, but I think what my understanding, what she was talking about, was not us not responding to public input, but us not necessarily making an immediate decision on something that's raised for the first time in public input, because we don't know until someone gets up here what they're going to talk about. And I think Jordana's comment was more that when someone raises something for the first time in public input, rather than make an immediate decision on it, that we take the opportunity to get up to speed on it and hear from all sides. And that's also true, I think, for all comments that are made, is sometimes when someone is saying something, it's when we don't respond, it may just be because we don't want to try to speak for the board, or because we may just want to try to learn more about that issue. So I just wanted to say that, and just for me personally, I think the public input is really important, and I think it's great when people come, and even if they're gonna get up and tell us we're the biggest idiots in the world and everything we're doing is terrible, I think it's great that people do that. And I think there are people who come here frequently and comment, and I think that that's very helpful in the process, and I think this process works best when people do that. So I personally, even if I don't respond, most of us don't usually respond, I appreciate everyone who comes here and everything they say, even if it's a critical comment. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. That, I think you did get the point of what I was trying to say regarding public input. I think I had said that we should just think about whether we want to take decisive board action based on limited facts we might hear from just a few people in the room, and not before we need to first fact check things before we make any kind of rash decisions. But I was not at all trying to discourage anyone from coming to public input. And I also, just so you know, I did actually think about whether to speak about the vaccination issue as board president versus public. And I came to the conclusion that I was speaking about what the board had been asked to do and what transpired from the board's perspective, not from the board's perspective, but from my perspective as board president. Had I spoken at public input, I would have spoken as a pro-vaccination person, not just limited to the tasks that we were actually faced with that night. But I didn't want to respond because I didn't want to have the last word. So I'd like, I mean, if you want to respond back, I feel free. I know that's not our
No,
practice.
and I think
but-
if we have answers that don't require us to look further or evaluate more information, we should be able to give answers to people at public comment, instead of waiting, because they're here, they have questions. If we have the answers and we have all the information, if we don't, then that's a reason we're gonna wait, but if we have the answers, we do.
Yes.
So, I mean,
I agree with Brian, because also I think the challenge is a lot of times people ask questions publicly, and the response to them, the follow-up response is a private email to them. But the question's been asked publicly, I would imagine that they're not the only person in the district that may have that question, yet the rest of the community never hears that answer. So even if there is a private response, maybe because it will require additional time and thought and reflection, then perhaps then we need to revisit it at the next meeting and say, these are 5 questions that were asked, here's how we answered them to the community members, just so the entire community knows. Because that does 2 things. 1, it informs the entire community, and 2, it puts it on record. So if it does require a follow-up, that would be a suggestion I have. And I agree with Brian that there are times like somebody asked, Kate asked, did we get everything that we were supposed to get from our last meeting? No, we didn't get most of it. And once again, I'm speaking me as a board member, I continue to be extraordinarily frustrated and concerned about a project when we cannot get information that the whole community should have. So no, we didn't. So that can be answered right now, unless someone feels like we got all our answers to all our questions, but
I so.
don't think so.
And I don't know if, I didn't see an update to answer the question on the installation. We had asked, I guess, for an update. I don't know if we received one yet from KD as to what her process still remains for approval on that project.
For what,
I
the
don't know.
project in the backyard?
Yeah.
I was surprised that I've inquired personally as a board member, additional information about what happened last week, because I think we all unexpectedly received that letter, and then we've heard a variety of things that have happened, so it'll be helpful for us as a board to know what really transpired last week. I rewatched the July 2nd video to make sure my recollection was what I thought it was, because we've had many meetings since. And what I witnessed was a board that said they wanted to move forward with it, a board that approved $12,500 of potential expenditures to it. What we didn't get as a board and community is follow-up public discussions about how to make that realized, which is a little frustrating, because back in July, the whole purpose was let's get it done in the summer before school opens, and now we're a few weeks into school, and we still haven't had that public discussion about how to finish it. So it seems like there's been some missing pieces in the process, and if there's been some frustration in the wake, I would be interested in knowing how that occurred, and apologize to anyone who was a victim of that.
Yeah, I think I spoke to Katie today, and I spoke to Drew today. and it sounds like there were some miscommunications, obviously. But I don't know that I'm not sure what our next path should be until we get more guidance from our superintendent, unless, I can't think of kind of an action we can take as a board right now, other than start work again, if that's what we wanna do, but,
I mean, I would.
I
just
don't
know
have any-
What if anything is missing to complete it, in terms of the administrative process in the school? We just had an idea, so we can convey that to them.
yeah, I mean, my understanding is we have a memo from our attorney, which I don't know if any of you, I feel like we got it a while ago, but I don't know that,
It talked about the potential risk
Risk.
of
Risk.
not
Right,
having,
it didn't
which is
have a path to
interesting,
approval.
because it was pointed out that every year we have volunteers build sets that our kids crawl on and jump on and dance on.
Yep.
Stairs and all of that. So as a district, there's some risks we're willing to absorb and others we're not, and again, we have attorneys to help advise us on that. So if, in fact, we need to have outsiders construct it, then my question is, what's taken so long?
I mean,
It's
I
been
was
2
just
months.
trying to brainstorm ideas, and so when I spoke to Drew today, he was like, oh, I could come back on Friday. He said it's 90% done, and you could have it finished, probably on Friday. And he mentioned that he's using volunteers that actually mostly have contracts, that are licensed contractors that have contracts with the district, so I think that the insurance piece might be covered. But I don't know that for sure, and that's, one of the reasons to not make decisions.
I think it's difficult
quickly.
to have this conversation without any administration.
Right, but, one idea I was throwing around, I just don't know if we're ready to do it, was we've been advised of the risks by our attorney. If we've decided that we don't want to follow that advice, we can, as a board, can decide that, but then the other piece is insurance. So, do we wanna move to kind of finish the project but not let anyone use it until we've cleared those?
Well, is there a
paths, or-
I think that's a great question. Is there a mechanism where if volunteers did construct it, is there a inspection that you do on equipment like this to certify that it is safe for children to use and then it can be used? I mean, if that's a step we can take that could satisfy the risk, just from my perspective, again, we approved this over 2 months ago, haven't had any follow-ups at board meetings to say this is how we're getting it done. So however we can expedite it, that's gonna be safe, legal, and, we should do. And not have this conversation in November, that it's been another 2 months.
My understanding was that we approved it, just subject to insurance and whatever needed to be pushed through on the school level, in terms of internally, and that we never heard from anything, so my presumption is that our will was approve it, we funded it, if funding was necessary, and that it was to be done. And so, from where I sit, my understanding was that we were moving forward with it, and if there was an issue, it should have come back to us, and it shouldn't have come back by way of stop work order, because that is not proper. So I would just like, for our next meeting, we can get an update from Katie as to what happened, but if it's a matter of an insurance, or, and I'm just guessing, I don't know if it was a matter of that, if they provide that to Katie tomorrow, I don't see why they couldn't just finish it, because we approved it just subject to those conditions. So I don't think any further action is needed,
Yeah.
because we said
I
yes, and we said
actually-
here's money, and
In rewatching the July
Yeah.
2nd video today, just because I wanted to
Yeah.
prepare, we did specifically talk about not having any volunteer labor do it, but as Chris points out, we have
Right.
volunteer labor do other things. But, I don't know, I mean,
Well, the other thing is, if we said we didn't wanna have volunteer labor, then the next action would be, then we don't have volunteer labor, then why didn't we have non-volunteer labor constructed? But we don't have an administrator to answer those questions, but we can publicly urge that, let's get this done, whatever right way we can get it done, and let's not be another two months.
Yeah,
It's
I think that's
just
right. I mean,
ridiculous.
I
look, the
appreciate
will was
everyone's.
to get it done, so you
Okay.
you can talk to Katie and say, whatever has to take, let's get it done. We want it done, we voted to approve it, we voted to fund it, just get it done.
What's next?
um,
Can I go back into the?
sorry, what?
Sure.
Please.
I just want to come back.
Sure.
I just want to say, so Alex said that you like sometimes when we're nice or whatever, so I'm gonna say something that is not so nice. The fact that we had to hire a lawyer and use taxpayer dollars to write a lawyer to give to a 23-year-old kid who's trying to make his career out of volunteerism is an absolute sin for this school district. I'm sorry, but it is not acceptable. I don't wanna hear about volunteers, cause my brother is a mason and he did that playground at the elementary school and he volunteered his time and kids are on it 24/7. So for me, it's not about that. Something else happened, I don't know what it is, but you guys need to fix it and clean up the mess and get that project up and running. I'm sorry, but it's not okay.
All right, so next is, there's a proposed executive session.
No, we have to add it to vote on.
Oh, 5.1, right, okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 5.1?
So moved.
Second. And this was added on because we need, added on to this meeting as a walk-on because we need somebody to do this work this week potentially, correct?
Yes.
So we can't wait till the next
Do you want me
one.
to read the resolution so it's
Sure.
out there,
Good.
since it's not up?
Sure.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education appoints Christine Schnell as temporary substitute district clerk effective September 16, 2019 until the next board meeting, October 7, 2019, at the rate of $100 per board meeting.
Any questions, items for discussion?
Okay, it should be coming up. Can you vote yes?
Yes.
Mine didn't pop up.
Oh, how would you like?
Yes,
That's unanimous, thank you.
it didn't come up.
It's unanimous.
So this, that's a point of clarity, I should have asked beforehand. So in terms of her being a substitute district clerk, this says just for a board meeting, she's not doing any other tasks?
No, that is, she'll be appointed until the next board meeting when we can appoint somebody else. It
Okay.
has to go out for the posting, so she'll do whatever comes up during the week.
Okay.
in-
I'm only asking because it says at a rate of $100 per board meeting,
So,
doesn't
so
reference
in
any
other words,
other
it won't
pay.
cost anything for her to do stuff during the day.
Okay, so that's the only cost,
Yeah,
is
there'll
if it's a
be
board
like
meeting.
things to sign, it won't cost, it'll
Got it.
only cost the district if she comes to a meeting at night.
Okay, thanks for the clarity.
You're welcome.
So to be clear on the projects, I know that's why there's a lot of people here. We approved it, we want it to go forward, we want it to be finished. We don't have right now what that missing piece is as to why the administration stopped it. But we asked the president to talk to the administration, find out what's missing so we can get it done and completed. You don't need any further action, as I understand it, from the board to move it forward. It's just whatever administrative work needs to be cleared up. Is that accurate for everybody?
But why did it
So
get
yes.
this far? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, what
We don't have an answer.
I know, why, there should be an answer. Don't you guys email, your boss email you and let you know what's going on? I guess not. Just like the Stella Maris, you haven't gotten the paperwork that the guy promised last week that you were gonna get. Unbelievable. Time for change.
Executive session?
So, anyone want a motion to go into exec?
So moved.
Thank you, Brian.
You wanna state the reason for the exec?
To discuss the employment of a particular person.
Yorgos, did you second?
Yes.
Okay. Alex is a yes.
Oh,
Sorry,
I
here it
was
comes.
waiting for the
It's
public,
coming
I'm
up.
sorry. You asked me
Is
for.
mine coming up
us to
here,
vote?
or should I just
It's
tell
not
you
coming
yes?
up.
It should come up. If you're logged in,
I am.
Alex is not logged in. Is anybody getting it?
It's not,
No.
well,
All
just
right,
vote by
just
hand.
Yes.
raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Stop the video.
Got it.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep,
All right, can I get a motion to reconvene from executive session?
So moved.
second,
I saw Yorgos's hand go up first.
it's all.
That was quick.
It was so quick on the draw.
All right, so Yorgos, and then Chris, and then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Unanimous
8:11.
at 8:11. Okay, and so, we're going to take two more actions. So first, the resolution is, be it resolved that the Sag Harbor Union Free School District Board of Education authorizes the board president to designate, with the input of the board, a board construction liaison for the purpose of gathering information directly from the contractor, and architect. Can I get a first?
I'll motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that was Chris, Susan, and then, I would like to nominate for the, shared decision-making steering committee, the board representative as being Diana Kolhoff, and the community representative that gets appointed by the board as being Donna Denon, subject to her availability to make the meeting times.
So moved.
Second.
Brian and Anna, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Before you, I just don't know, did we do a motion out of exec?
Yes.
We did.
We did, okay, Mr. Sorry.
Yep.
That was the first one.
We put you down as a yes.
I did vote yes. We're starting the camera.
You turned the camera
Take a little time.
We're starting the camera, so I did vote yes.
Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Chris and then Brian, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous at
Very good.
13.
Good.